Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Premier League football. I don't know what you want to call it. Roundup, chat, ramble, whatever you want to call it, really. Yeah, I figured I'd do this today. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the Sunday. As I record this, I'm going to try and put this up as soon as possible, so it stays pretty relevant because things are happening very quickly now with football. Stuff is moving super fast. But let's talk about the big news, I guess. Football is back. Or should I say Arsenal lost twice? No, really. The big news is football is back. For ages, by the way, I haven't had a light go out. That is the sun going in from the window there. For ages we've waited. It's been 3 months probably since we've had a game. That's the longest break in football I think we've probably ever had since World War II, perhaps. I don't know if that's a fact, but I'd imagine it probably is pretty much like that. Obvious for good reason. There's been that that break, and we come back into football in some weird times because there's no fans. There's obviously heightened kind of measures, slightly different rules, regarding subs and stuff. And with players, having not competed in competitive matches for so long, a certain level of rustiness, I think, from some players out there. But it's... Sorry, I just sneezed, actually. Just managed to pause the recording before I did that. Always happens when I go to record. You can see now the sun's come back out in this room. It's so weird. But there's... Yeah, it's been super weird. I know that a lot of people were not perhaps happy about football coming back in this state. Unfair advantages maybe for some of the teams not being able to play at home, or playing at home but with no fans. How would players cope? You can look at it and go, well, some teams had injuries which now they don't, and they've gotten stronger, while other teams maybe have gotten weaker. You've got the whole thing where people's contracts are coming up to be expired in literally 9 days from now. How will they react, playing these games when maybe they're looking for a win, a move? But we have to kind of carry on. There has to be a finish this season. I said this in a video, when it stopped. In my opinion, it would be disastrous for them to abandon the season. And, just because we've started now, it doesn't obviously guarantee that we will finish. There could be a second wave, there could be more consequences that leads to us not finishing, but fingers crossed we do finish this season and we see it out. Not just because it would kind of be a travesty for Liverpool, who have played so well this season, but for some of the teams out there who have also done really well. Sheffield United have been pushing there the whole season. Leicester have been, consistently up in the Champions League positions. Even my own team, Crystal Palace, are on course for, their best finish in the Premier League. Take into account as well the Championship and other things like that, the relegation, everything. It's unfair. It just would feel unfair if the season stopped. And I know some people would disagree because they're probably fans of teams who... whether you're a Man City fan or whether you are a Bournemouth fan or whatever, the only fair thing I think is to play it out. And I feel like it is fair to play it out because we're playing on a level playing field with people. Everyone's had the same amount of time off. Everyone plays in front of behind closed doors. It's as much as you can do, isn't it? Really, I was a little bit sceptical of how these games would feel. Having watched a few now, I picked up the Sky Sports Pass because there were so many games coming up, and obviously I still have probably a week or so before going back to work, that I was like, it kind of makes sense. I want to be able to watch some football. Ironically, of course, my team, Crystal Palace, were playing on BBC One, so it wasn't that necessary, I guess, in that respect. But I've watched a few of the others, and actually been surprised at the quality of the football. Really enjoyed it. Especially considering the players have been off for so long, and what they're coming back to. It has weirdly felt like the start of a new season, but without that kind of new signing hype where you're looking for those players in their first games. It's as if everyone had a transfer ban and we're coming into a new season. It's a little weird, and obviously not having the fans there is weird. I personally watched the games with the fan noise turned on. I find it super weird without. It must be very odd for the players in the stadiums. It must be odd. But, you know, they're playing at an elite level, and these are things they have to, I guess, overcome. So everything kicked off on Wednesday the 17th, and I was going to kind of wait until like Monday, Tuesday to do a video, but we've had so many games, you know, some teams have even played twice now, that I was like, I feel like I have to do a video now, and then maybe we'll do another one on Tuesday because there's so much going on. You know, on Wednesday we had the Aston Villa against the Sheffield Uniteds on there, 0-0, although you know, there was obviously the ghost goal. I'm looking to see whether or not, okay, yeah, they do mention it. I was wondering whether they would or not, as this is like the official Premier League site. So yeah, the talking point of this was, I should actually say before that, before all the games players are taking in the when the match kicks off, which is quite a powerful statement actually. I don't want to say I was skeptical of things like that, but it actually did feel like it was something, and all the names are replaced with Black Lives Matter on there, and yeah, it's kind of cool in a way. People will always begrudge and say, well, that does nothing, but at least they're doing something. Like, it, if you're naive enough to think that, oh, everything's going to be okay now because of XYZ, then that's obviously silly. You know, if you think that putting Black Lives Matter on the back of a shirt is going to correct everything, then it's silly. But all these little things add up. They add up. They educate people. They raise awareness. It all adds up in little ways. And it does annoy me when people will be like, oh, you know, what is it? That doesn't change anything. Like, that sort of kind of... I don't really like the word negativity, but it is kind of that kind of negative thing of like, oh, let's just not bother doing anything then. Let's just keep everything the way it is, and no one makes a difference. Of course, there's always more people can do, you know. But yeah, we've seen some great stories during lockdown, you know, with players like Marcus Rashford, you know, who have come out, and you know, personally, his foundation has raised a lot of money. Done a great job, and you know, kids are now going to be able to eat over August, and perhaps in some way also contributed to Katie Hopkins being kicked off Twitter. So in all, he's probably going to get knighted at the end of the year, which I wouldn't necessarily disagree with. But yeah, I think, you know, you have to turn around and go, okay, we need to continue to make steps, continue to make these statements, continue to try to make a difference and do all this. And if you're someone who's sitting there going, well, you know, that's not going to make a difference, then start making a difference yourself. That's what I would say. Start looking at what you're doing day to day and make that difference, because that's what people can do. Back to the football. It's a big talking point of the first match was the goal, which was not given, even though it was a goal. So the Villa goalkeeper, caught a curling free kick. He was kind of knocked into by one of his own players and stumbled back across the goal line. The ball was clearly over the goal line. However, there should be this goal line technology which you know, goes off. I think the ref has a watch, and it vibrates if the ball crosses the line, and it didn't go off. There was a fault. and as a result, the goal wasn't given, which fascinates me because what is VAR there for? Its clear decision was wrong. Amazing. And yeah, and then the goal line tech as well, failing there as well. So I feel like that should get tested before a game. Maybe it did. Maybe we don't know what went wrong. But at the end of the day, that's potentially cost Sheffield United 3 points in their quest to move up the league, of which actually we can get the table here. Yes, okay, fine. I'll take your cookies. In 7th, they could have been 5th off that. It's a big mistake. They've just got beaten by Newcastle actually, although so that was a weird one. But yeah, it's an injustice, shall we say? Villa will take that point, I think. They're in trouble, without a doubt. They've got a big game which is actually kicked off already, playing against Chelsea, and it's going to be a tough one for them. I know Chelsea will want to try and cement their Champions League places when they've kind of been fading a little bit. But yeah, it's what can you say? You can't go back and change it. It should be changed, but there you go. Going on to the next match, which was, the David Luiz show, really, wasn't it? When David Luiz signed for Arsenal, I can't remember my genuine reaction from it. I think I thought at the time, which was that David Luiz offers you a lot of things in defence. He offers you good passing ability. He offers you some experience. He offers you, to a certain extent, some leadership. I think that's possibly fair. What he doesn't offer you is a solid defence in reality, unless he has someone alongside him who is very solid. So when he used to play with like John Terry, or sometimes when he's in a 3 with 2 very solid defenders, he does shine. In a 4 at the back kind of mentality, like system, when he's playing with another fullback who is either very inexperienced or just not very good, he is pretty terrible. It shows up his faults. He has a lot of positives to him. At the end of the day, he wouldn't be a Premier League player if he didn't bring something to your team, and he does bring some things, but what he's bringing is not what Arsenal need. And he's prone to these clangers, he's prone to these flare-ups where it just all goes wrong for him. And this was one of those games, Raheem Sterling ripped him apart. He brings down Kevin De Bruyne, gets sent off. De Bruyne scores a penalty, gets suspended for 2 games. What can you do, City, I feel like they're going to try and prove a point, I think, the rest of the season. They're not going to win the league. I'm pretty sure of that. It would be disastrous for Liverpool if they did. They're not going to win the league. I actually don't know. I think the Champions League is still going ahead. But they're in the... I can't even remember who's in the Champions League. I genuinely cannot remember who's in the Champions League. It's been that long. I don't think they are they? Let me just have a look. Let me just Google this, because it's going to drive me crazy if I don't do this now. But, okay, so Champions League 2020. So, how are they going to do it now? So it's going to resume on the 7th of August, apparently, with the quarterfinals. So who is playing? Oh, okay. So still to play. Sorry, yeah. So we do still have Man City are still in it. So are Chelsea, but Chelsea are unlikely to go through, aren't they? Because they got hammered by Bayern. but Man City could. So I have a feeling like they're going to really try and get through. And I think they're 2-1 up, aren't they, against Real Madrid, Man City? So they're going to try and I think go for that and really push on. But they, second is pretty cemented for them, I think, and they brushed Arsenal aside, really, didn't they? I didn't think Arsenal played badly for the first sort of 20 minutes or so, but what are the stats on this telling me? They're probably going to tell me, Arsenal didn't have a shot on target. Man City had 12. So Leno pulled off 9 saves, and or 8 or 9 saves. They had 20 shots in total. Yeah, they demolished Arsenal. And listen, I could talk all day about Arsenal, and I probably will, but they kind of fascinate me, Arsenal, in a way. Like Man City, you look at that team and go, that is a really, really good team. They have some faults every now and then, and every now and then they'll have a bit of a clanger, or they won't be able to perform to that exceptionally high level that they've had set, that people expect of them. But when you look at how far Arsenal Football Club have dropped in, probably the last decade, it's crazy, in a time when it shouldn't happen to big clubs because of things like financial fair play. Like financial fair play, for all people say, I was brought in to give smaller clubs a lift. Well, it wasn't. It's actually what it does is it keeps the big clubs up, because when you say to the smaller clubs, well, actually, even if you have the money, you can't spend it. So even if you have a rich owner, if you're, I don't know, say Sheffield United, I think, are owned by the Arabs, and or some Arab state of some kind. If you say, well, Sheffield United, you could be quite rich, or is it Chinese ownership, Sheffield United? Anyway, I happen to know that their owners have quite a lot of money. Leicester owners have quite a lot of money. Say that their owners wanted to invest money in there, or say, for example, Newcastle got taken over by the Saudis, as that is kind of been muted as happening, because their turnover isn't high, because they're not in the European competitions, because they don't generate the worldwide money. Their sponsorships are not as high. They can't spend as much of a proportion of their turnover, even if they have the money. So it actually keeps those clubs like Man United up there, because Man United have been pretty terrible the last few seasons, but they're able to buy these big players because they've got so many sponsorship deals bringing in the money that financial fair play wise, they're making a lot of money. This is the argument with Man City, that they were able to do it because arguably, their sponsors were maybe a little bit on the dodgy side. However you want to look at that. So with financial fair play, it should keep the top clubs at the top. But when you, I guess, mismanage a club as much as Arsenal has been, both on the pitch and at a senior level, what you get is just this calamitous set of circumstances where Arsenal are now 10th. They lost to Brighton, we'll come on to that, and they're a shambles. They have multiple players coming into the last year of their contract, like their top players, so Aubameyang, I think Lacazette as well, and then good young players like Saka, who is probably one of their best young players, if not the best young player they have at the club, again coming into the last year of his contract. And you just wonder what has happened at this football club. That is it that blind, is the leadership that blind that they're either not doing their jobs properly, or the people below them who they've put in charge of certain positions are not doing their job. How can you mismanage a club this badly? The signings they make are woeful. They either massively overpay for players like Nicolas Pepe, or they just sign utter crap. They think they get deals like with David Luiz, but really they're paying such high wages for someone like that it's just irrelevant. You can't tell me that there isn't a defender out there who would be better value than David Luiz. I think what David Luiz, they looked at David Luiz and went, well, hang on a minute, this guy, look how cheap he is, and he's David Luiz. Like, that's a name. We can kind of sell that to the fans, and like, you know, image rights, and he's Brazilian and he does cool things sometimes, and without actually thinking that actually what we need is a real defender, you know, somebody who will marshal the back line. People talk about the fact that Crystal Palace got Gary Cahill for nothing, and Arsenal got, you know, David Luiz and paid, and they could have had Cahill. I don't necessarily think that's 100% true, because Cahill is not a quick defender, and that suits Palace because they play with a very deep defence, you know, play counter-attacking football. But from a point of view of a defensive leader, you know, David Luiz, I kind of said that he does bring you leadership to some extent, and by that I mean, yeah, he's an experienced player. What I don't think he brings you is the leadership of marshalling a defence. I think when he was in his prime at Chelsea, he had that player alongside him, or at Paris Saint-Germain, he had Thiago Silva. I think he has to have that player alongside him to marshal the defence. There is experience there, obviously. The guy's in his 30s now, has played in World Cups. You know, he's won the Champions League. He's played in multiple leagues. But in terms of that being a leader and marshalling the defence, I don't think he's there. You know, so Cahill would offer you that. And Cahill would offer you better defending. Like, he's less prone to make mistakes. But, you know, from a point of view of whether he would fit in at Arsenal, I kind of doubt that necessarily, without a change in their circumstances, would necessarily work for them. But I know David Luiz doesn't really fit in. I think Arsenal are just at a point, though, where people will say, well, they don't spend any money. Now, Nicolas Pepe cost them, I think, 70 million. That is as much as the entire Crystal Palace first team cost to buy. Crystal Palace are above Arsenal in the league. There are bargains out there to be had. There are players you can find out there who will be good. Either your scouting isn't good, you know, which is kind of clear with Arsenal. They signed some real duds. You know, the structure of bringing through kids is... Arsenal have a lot of talented youngsters. You know, we can see this coming through, but it's... I wonder about him, though. For example, I'll take Eddie Nketiah, who was on loan at Leeds and could barely get into the Leeds side. Came back off loan, you know, in January, and then suddenly he's in the Arsenal team, and you're like, if you can't get into the Leeds team, how are you getting into the Arsenal team? What are we seeing here? He's exceptionally highly thought of, but I'm not seeing on the pitch what people are seeing right now. He's very young and absolutely could come through and be a fantastic player, but there's not the leaders around in the squad to kind of bring through those young players. You know, when you look at a team like Man United, who are probably the most legendary for bringing through youngsters, you know, had so many. When those players stepped into the first team, they had players like Schmeichel, Keane, Irwin, Pallister, to an extent, I guess Cantona in there, who, you know, Robson as well. Brian Robson was there, Brian McClare. They had so many experienced professionals to kind of bring them through and say, and, you know, slap them down when they would get out of hand or pick them up when they were down, and to teach them. And that team, they wouldn't have been as good players if they didn't learn from the experiences of those older players. And, you know, they will tell you that themselves. And I see at Arsenal, and you look at the squad and you go, okay, well, who are those top players who these guys are coming in with? And the only players I see who have probably got the kind of leadership skills in there, the experience, and seem like they have the leadership skills to bring through, you know, there are players like probably Aubameyang, who Aubameyang gets a bad rep, which I feel is actually unjustified. I think he had a couple of spats at Dortmund, but I feel like he is a bit of a victim of the press sometimes, of them wanting a story and him being a black athlete. I actually do think when you look at his time at Arsenal, he has been one of their most consistent performers. He's rarely had a problem on the pitch, and you don't see him sulk a lot. Like when I see him, I'd be like, yeah, he's probably been one of Arsenal's most consistent performers. Xhaka as well. Obviously, he had some problems with the fans, but in terms of experienced pro, I think for someone to look up to, he's kind of up there. And there's not a lot else. There's not a lot else there for people to kind of come in and look at. People like Hector Bellerin should kind of be there. He's been at Arsenal a long time. He's come up when they were, in their pomp, but for whatever reason, I don't know why, whether it's injury problems that he's had, which he has had extensively. I don't know why he doesn't seem like the sort of leader that perhaps people thought he is, which sometimes you're not going to be. Like sometimes people expect you to be this leader just because you're an older player, and I guess like David Luiz in a way, you can have the experience, but you're perhaps not a leader. But then Arsenal need to find those players to do that, to bring them in, and that's where they failed, miserably. And when I look at Crystal Palace's team, and I say it's just because I'm a Crystal Palace fan, and yes, I am biased in a way, but when I look at their team, what I see is a team of players who will give 100% every game. They will do their jobs absolutely spot on every game. They may not be the household names. They may not, curl a ball in when they cut in from the right from 25 yards, but they will absolutely give 100% on that pitch. And that's the difference between you holding on to a 1-0 lead and losing 2-1. You can curl them in from 30 yards out all you want. If you cannot defend as a team, if you cannot play as a team, if you don't have leadership, you will crumble. And that is what is happening to Arsenal right now. I guess you combine that with an inexperienced manager. As much as people want to give Arteta a chance, I personally feel like he was not a very good appointment for them. I think I said this at the time, that I didn't feel like he was the one they were looking for. I understand that it's kind of fashionable to get this young manager through. There's shades of Pep in him. He obviously, worked under Pep. He's a very articulate manager. He's obviously very smart. What worries me is the experience. I saw in the Bournemouth and Crystal Palace game that Roy Hodgson won his first league title as a manager before Eddie Howe was born. That is experience. Like, that is a crazy stat. A guy who has been there, done that, knows how to work with people. When I look at myself as a manager, I don't make the mistakes I made 10 years ago. The way I treat people, the way I communicate, I can see issues arising before they've risen now where I couldn't before. That is experience in the job, and Arteta doesn't have that. He might have fantastic football philosophies, but when you're coming in, I think he's expected to do a job similar to the one Wenger did, and I think that's a lot to put on his shoulders. People will say, well, Wenger managed to do it. I think Wenger was a bit of a one-off in that respect, and he came at a different time when he brought in a lot of, new techniques, this kind of foreign style, which hadn't really been seen before. He brought in a lot of foreign players, to work with him as well. There was a lot better kind of diet, nutrition from him, training wise as well. He was an innovator in that respect. I don't think Arteta can come in and get away with that. He can't just turn around and say, right, no one's having any tomato ketchup, and suddenly they're going to turn up next week, because every other team in the league's doing that now. Every other team in the league has, the best nutritionists. Every team in the league has, fantastic training facilities, and, all this kind of stuff, and all this stuff now, which other teams didn't used to have access to when Wenger came in. So expecting Arteta to be able to do a similar job is crazy. Couple that with the fact that he's not even had a full season. It's incredibly harsh to turn around and say, I don't think he's up to the job. But I don't think he's up to the job, personally. I think they needed to get in somebody who was a bit steady, not somebody flash, somebody who knows the league, who can build a team, maybe for only maybe a couple of seasons, something like that, and get in there. Emery was a poor choice. He wasn't a strong enough personality with the players. There was a lot of players who needed to be moved on, and partly that was the board as well, not really backing Emery. You felt, the whole battle with Ozil. I mean, Ozil's still there. He's still there, still not playing, still collecting 300 grand a week for not playing. It's mind-boggling. Of all the football clubs, probably in the entire football league, I think Arsenal are the worst run. The decisions they make, you could spend hours a week talking about it, and we love it. Fans of other clubs, Arsenal are the ultimate banter club. This huge club. The fans still think that they're one of the best clubs in the world. To be fair, most of their fans don't think that anymore. But there's still so many fans who can remember so vividly the Wenger days, the glory days, the Invincibles, all that kind of stuff. That I guess what's happening now is just so unbelievable of like how far they've dropped, and the thought of then trying to get back up into that is like, how do we even do this? Because every time we buy a player, they're a flop. Who are we buying? You look at that, they've been unlucky as well. They had 2 injuries in the Man City game straight away. Pablo Mari, who only just joined them, centre back, is, obviously he was injured, quite early on. And he's now out for the rest of the season. Like I think I saw the stats where like every player who they have signed, on a loan, and I know Mari, I think he's joining them permanently, but every player they've signed on a loan in January has played. I think Murray's played the most games of 2. It's unbelievable how poor the recruitment is with them. Ceballos he's a decent enough player, but he's not what Arsenal needed. He's not what they want. I think they thought they were getting Santi Cazorla, and they didn't. It is mind-boggling, and I kind of get the despair of Arsenal fans. And what's kind of worse, I think, is I dislike Arsenal with a passion. I've kind of said this before because I used to work in Islington, home of Arsenal. So many of my co-workers were Arsenal fans, and they used to lord it over me all the time. So I hated Arsenal. Every time they lost, I would rejoice. When Palace beat them, it was just the best, because we went on a long run where we did not get a thing against them. But it was a great day when we beat them. Joel Ward, legend. But I just feel sorry for them now, because it just looks like their owners are almost intent upon destroying them. There was that whole thing where it was like, remember the days when Arsenal were criticised because all they ever got was 4th place in the Champions League, and Wenger was like, well, it's like a trophy, in the Champions League, and the fans are unhappy now. What they would give to go back to those days of being in 4th place. You're in 10th place in the league, and he lost to Brighton, who I don't have as much beef with Brighton as most Palace fans. Like, I actually quite like Brighton. I like Graham Potter. I think he's a good manager. But let's not pretend that they should be able to compete with Arsenal. And they absolutely competed with them and more, Arsenal are woeful. Moving on. Southampton, Norwich. Norwich, I think it's safe to say Norwich are going to be in the Championship next season. I feel a bit sorry for them. Like, they've come up, they've tried to do their thing, they've tried to play the same way, they've tried to stick with a lot of the players who they had, and it was not good enough. I don't think, in a way, like financially from their point of view, it's not like they went out and did a Fulham and spent 100 million or whatever on players and tried to stay up. They didn't, and they've got some good players there, and they'll probably do pretty well in the Championship. I wonder if Daniel Farke will stay with them. A lot of people have kind of gone with him, but my biggest criticism though is people always be like, oh well, he's a good manager, he's stuck to his guns, blah blah blah. A good manager keeps Norwich in the Premier League, in my opinion. A good manager turns around and goes, right, we need to adapt to the Premier League, not let's play the same way, guys. We know the way we play. This is what we believe. Let's play the same way. Like, in my opinion, it's idiotic. You go up into the Premier League, it's not just a slight step up, it's a goal of difference. There are some very smart, every team in the Premier League is financially well off. Even the least financially well off team in the Premier League, even, I don't want to disparage Burnley, but even say Burnley are still probably in the top 50 richest clubs in the world, or maybe even top 40. Maybe even top 30, actually, thinking about it, because Premier League is so rich. Like, they can go out and spend money that a lot of teams in, say, the League One, other than Paris Saint-Germain, could only dream of. Even some teams who are in the Champions League are not as financially viable as Burnley. So you're going against those teams, and you're going to turn around and say, well, with the team which won the league below, we're going to play the same way. And it's just, I find it a little bit disrespectful to some managers out there who have always consistently done a great job in the Premier League by adapting to what they've had to work with. So Big Sam gets a bad rep, and yeah, he is a bit of a knob, and the whole England thing was a joke and all that. But as a manager, people often don't like the way he plays. But look at West Ham now. Look at some of the teams who play. Look at Steve Bruce at Newcastle, the job he's doing there. They just beat Sheffield United 3-0. That is a team where the players are, apart from a couple of them, they're championship quality. They're in 12th now, okay, in the league. Why? Because he's played a certain way. I don't want to keep banging on about Palace, because I'll come to them soon, but Roy Hodgson is an absolute legend at that. He does not get any credit whatsoever. Even amongst some Palace fans, the guy is a wizard. The guy is a genius manager. Like, managers like Tony Pulis, etc., they adapt, and people turn around and say, well, they can't play the fancy football. They can't bring that in and play the fancy football. Well, let me tell you, there's only a few managers in this league who can do that. When you look at some of the teams in here, who plays good football in this league? Well, I'd turn around and say, maybe top 4 do. Man United on their day can play pretty good football. I mean, Spurs are not playing good football right now. Arsenal are not playing good football right now. Wolves do all right, but they're very counter-attacking. They're playing to their strengths as well. Sheffield United, exactly the same way. They have their particular style, but it's not exactly this tiki-taka, thing everyone's going for. Everton, Carlo Ancelotti's coming in and slightly changing them, but who is playing this this football that everybody is thinking that Norwich were going to come in the league and they were going to outplay teams? Of course they weren't. It's ridiculous. I think in some respects, I think Daniel Farke's done a good job at Norwich, but I think this season should be a massive learning curve, that you cannot come and disrespect the Premier League. You cannot come in and go, we're just going to play the same way with the same players and we're going to stay up, and because this is what happens. You get found out. This is where the big boys play, and you will get ripped apart by even the teams struggling, because their managers will adapt quicker than championship teams will be able to. These players are more intelligent, in a football sense. Nigel Pearson, he's doing a very good job at Watford right now, and some of these managers, they don't get as much credit as they kind of deserve for winning games in the Premier League by whatever means necessary, basically. But on to Southampton, who had, they played really well. They scored some cracking goals in this game as well. Danny Ings, curling one in. I feel with Danny Ings is like, I don't want to be disrespectful to him, but he's like Harry Kane light, isn't he? Like, I feel like I look at Harry Kane and him, and I see Danny Ings is a very similar sort of player in that he is that kind of focal point of attack. Like, he finishes really well with his feet and with his head. But he's not like the quickest guy you'll ever see. He's an intelligent striker. He can finish really well. And he can also build up the team as well. He's a good passer of the ball. Like, he's not as good as Harry Kane, obviously, but I see that similar sort of player. I wonder what would have happened to him if he hadn't have had those injuries, or maybe if he'd have gone to a team that wasn't Liverpool, where he just sat in the reserves, for years. If he'd have actually maybe gone to more of a upper mid-table team like Crystal Palace, and in there, maybe his career would have been different. But he's doing really well at Southampton. You can't argue with it there. Nathan Redmond's another one as well, who you see him on the ball and you feel like he should have done more than what he is doing. Sometimes I feel like certain players, like Nathan Redmond reminds me a bit of Wilf Zaha, where he's obviously a very skillful player. He's capable of moments of magic, but I think he sacrifices that sometimes for the team. And as a result, if he was playing in maybe a better team, like Nathan Redmond, I think would have the skill to play in a Man City team. But he doesn't show that because he's at Southampton, if that makes sense. Like Wilf Zaha, in my opinion, technically could fit into a Man City team. There might be other issues there with them. There's not just a technical ability thing. But I think he's got the technical ability to do that, but he doesn't show it because of the systems that the team plays. It's more of a selfless kind of system. In a way, I feel like he is a very good player though on his day. And Stuart Armstrong also with a pretty good goal as well. And yeah, they just annihilated Norwich, really, didn't they? Norwich had one shot on target, had possession, but defensively they weren't up for it. Timo Pukki had a pretty good chance, which was blocked. But yeah, otherwise, kind of the way it went. Tottenham v Man United. Tottenham's another one who I feel like Mourinho was a terrible choice of manager there. I'm getting the feeling now, because it's such negative football that a lot of their attacking talent, who are used to, scoring goals and being an attacking side, which is a lot more fun, let's face it, at the end of the day, I just see them being like, nah, I'm out if this Mourinho thing just carries on longer. Where was Harry Kane in this match? Like, he was nowhere. I feel like Man United got robbed a little bit here. I think, did they hit the crossbar twice? Definitely hit the crossbar once, I think. Rashford had a couple of chances, which I don't think he's quite fully fit, but I think if he was, he would have put them away. I guess he had too many school dinners. That's a joke. I think Martial hit the crossbar, didn't he, or something like that. I felt like Man United should have won this. I think Spurs are really poor, and when you look at Spurs' team, I look at that team and go, that's a really good team. The only player kind of missing there, I guess, is probably Dele Alli. But Dele Alli's been very off this season, and in terms of Man United, they had Pogba on the bench, who they did manage to bring on, obviously. But yeah, having said that, of course, I can say that Man United couldn't feel aggrieved not to have won, but at the end of the day, they were victims of their own downfall. It was terrible defending from Harry Maguire, who just let Bergwijn. Why did you show him inside? Like, that's schoolboy defending, isn't it? Like, you show them outside. Yeah, weird. And then De Gea with a save, which a Premier League goalkeeper should have saved that. I'm not saying David De Gea should be saving that. He absolutely should be. He's a quality goalkeeper, and it was exceptionally poor. Any Premier League quality goalkeeper should have saved that shot, frankly, but he didn't, and it was poor, and they paid the price. Bruno Fernandes with the penalty. They had a penalty overturned by VAR, which was the correct decision at the end of the day. I feel like, yeah, they were just a bit unlucky. Man United not to win this. I think they can feel a little bit aggrieved, but I think they'll get better with Pogba back in the side. and are fully fit, like Rashford and Martial, and they need to give a bit more game time to Greenwood, I think, as well. But Spurs I worry for, because there's a lot of talent there. I just don't know why they would hang around. Um, Son Heung-min, in my opinion, could go to any club in the world and fit in. Harry Kane obviously could. Um, and if you are those guys, are you going to turn around and go, well, should I stay in this Tottenham side and play negative football, run around a lot more because I don't have any ball, or Real Madrid are calling me up wanting me to come and play with all their players. It's not a hard decision to make, is it? I don't think, at the end of the day. So I worry a little bit for Tottenham at the end of this season, like what's going on there. We move on to Saturday's games. Watford, Leicester, two absolute crackers of goals here. Ben Chilwell with just a thunderous finish. Just absolutely thunderous finish. Really, ball just came to him, and he's just running onto it and just launches it, and it was a spectacular goal. But then, Craig Dawson with a scissor kick to, make it 1-1 in the kind of last minutes is awesome as well. It was a great finish to what was a pretty, static kind of game. Leicester have, I think, fallen off a lot from when people are lauding them as the next coming, lauding Brendan Rodgers as the next coming. Well, I think he's a very good manager, and I think Leicester are actually a very good team. And I think they're achieving exactly what they're capable of achieving, not overachieving. Whether some of those players will be there next season, I think a lot of them are being coveted. Maddison, Ndidi, maybe even some of the defence as well. Chilwell, they're being very coveted. Wonder if Leicester can keep hold of them. They couldn't keep hold of some of their other players like Kante and Mahrez. Harvey Barnes, I'm sure people will be interested in him. Tielemans looks absolutely brilliant. I wonder whether they're going to be able to keep hold of some of these players at the end of the season. I guess the end of this season is going to be different because teams won't have the money, perhaps because of reduced income from fans, etc., to be able to spend. But I still think teams are going to spend money. And you look at that from 2 points of view. Clubs won't have the money to spend. They might need to bring in more money by selling players. So, if Leicester City get a £50 million bid for Ben Chilwell, are they going to be able to resist that? Is Ben Chilwell going to want to resist that? I don't know. I mean, they're in the Champions League, and I think realistically they should be able to keep that team together. But it's going to be interesting. How many points do they have now? 54. So they're 6 points above fourth. They're 8 points above fifth. Fifth might get you a Champions League place if City win the Champions League. I don't think Chelsea are going to. So the argument there that they should get Champions League football, but they weren't on it. Yeah, they had a couple of dodgy losses. Well, I guess Man City is what it is, but you're at home. I think they would have wanted more. Norwich is a bad loss. Then they battered Villa just before it broke up, and then Watford are a tough side. Brighton next, who they should beat theoretically. That's just my one of my thumbnails I was doing. I don't know why I've still got it open, but I have. And Watford I think are going to stay up. I think they've got enough about them with Nigel Pearson that they're going to be able to stay up. They've got some decent players there. I always felt like they were in the wrong, they shouldn't be in the relegation zone. But nothing's for granted now. I just feel like there is definitely three worse teams than Watford currently, with what they've got. Some good saves from Ben Foster and Kasper Schmeichel. Actually, in this one, was it fairly even? Yeah, Leicester had 2 on target. Watford had 4. It was fairly even. Brighton, Arsenal. We've spoken a lot about Arsenal. Just to say in this game that this is kind of typically Arsenal. They'll go ahead and score a curly, Thierry Henry-esque goal and then completely throw away the lead. Brighton are a team who don't give up. to compound the misery of Arsenal, Bernd Leno, who is clearly their player of the season, has been fantastic for them. Probably stopped it being like 9-0 in the Man City game. Went off and is probably out for the season, if not longer. People are saying about the Mopé challenge. I think it's a cheeky one for Mopé, which I see loads and loads of players do, and it not result in an injury. So I don't think it's a challenge intended to injure. I think it's one of those ones where it's a cheeky one meant to piss off the opposition. Leno hit the ground awkwardly and like hyperextended his knee, I think. And people are calling for a red card. Well, for me, it's like, I think when Son Heung-min got injured, it's one of those ones where it's like the injury makes the tackle look worse. If Leno gets up and walks off, no one's calling for a red card. So why are you calling for a red card because he got injured? It's like, and trust me, that I've seen that challenge 100 times and the goalkeeper not get injured. So I don't think it was a red card. I think it was a cheeky challenge. I think the telling factor though was when I see a lot of teams, their players would have been straight on top of Mopé. As soon as he did that challenge, they would have been right in his face. And I just didn't see any of the Arsenal players doing that until the final whistle after he scored. And then suddenly they were pissed off at him. And it's like, it just doesn't feel like there's that team mentality at Arsenal. It doesn't feel like they have that kind of willingness to, it's cliche, but that kind of willingness to go out there on the pitch and give everything and die for each other, in a way. It doesn't feel like they have that. It feels like there's too many people perhaps waiting for their contract to expire, or waiting for the summer, or just feeling like they've got nothing to play for. When they came out of this lockdown period with the ability, if they'd have got some points, they'd have got 4 points in the last 2 games. If we go back to the league, Arsenal would be on 44. They'd be challenging for Europa, if not Champions League places, but they didn't. They bottled it. You go 1-0 up to a team like Brighton with, again, no disrespect meant to Brighton, but you should be winning that game. They didn't. Poor defending. They defend shockingly. You look at that bench, and in the 87th minute, it's 1-1. You're looking for a winner, and you're bringing on Kieran Tierney when you have Gabriel Martinelli on the bench, or Mesut Ozil. There's some very dodgy stuff going on. I don't know what it is. I feel like there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff at Arsenal that we don't know about, and I don't know if it'll ever come out. But they need this. Whatever break we get between the end of this season and the next, which will be pretty short, I think, they need that to clear out some players, or cement some players down on a contract and actually be like, right, you're going to be here for the next 4 years, and we're going to change the way things are around here, because it's not working for them. Brighton obviously were in, well, they still are, I guess, in the relegation kind of positions. They're only 5 points clear, but I think they'll be okay. They've got quite a tough run in, but they showed a lot of fight on there. I think that I think they should pick up enough points. Just about. They're not going any higher than where they are, I don't think. But a team who is in trouble is West Ham. Great goal from, well, 2 great goals actually, to be fair. The difference was Adama Traore came on as a sub, placed a great cross on the head of Jimenez. Set up, well, he had the kind of pre-assist, didn't he, for Matt Doherty's goal. It passed it to Doherty, who then crossed it across. Neto just comes in, smashes it in. Brilliant goal, absolutely superb. I was watching that one and it was good. I actually said in this game, prior to the Jimenez goal, I was like, God, this game seems to have 0-0 written all over it. But it seems like West Ham just wilted and Wolves just came up. I saw a journalist say that they think West Ham are going to stay up because they've just got too many good players. Well, a good player is a player who plays well. So whatever you see Felipe Anderson doing before he was at West Ham, he's not doing it now. I saw him just lose possession over and over again. Declan Rice, a shadow of what he was, it seems. Pablo Fornals just looked rushed to his help. Mikel Antonio, in my opinion, is not a Premier League striker. Just poor. They were really poor, West Ham, and they spent a lot of money, and I just have this feeling that they're going to go down. I really do. I think Wolves, I can see them getting into that Champions League position. At least Europa League. I mean, they could win the Europa League, I believe, couldn't they? They're still in that. But I think Wolves are one to look out for. They're a really solid team. They are doing very well. They have very good players. A well-run club, you have to say. So West Ham, I think serious trouble for them. Spurs next. That's the type of game Mourinho will grind out a result in, I guarantee you that. I think David Moyes was not a good managerial signing. I know I spoke about how some British managers not getting the praise that they deserve. I don't think David Moyes is one of them. I don't think he's a particularly great manager. I think he had a good thing going at Everton, and it was right place, right time for him. And he had a good collection of players. They brought fairly well. They bought quite a few duds over the years, but they had other players who were very effective, like Tim Cahill, Fellaini, etc. Some good defenders there, Leighton Baines, and I've forgotten the name of the right back now. Same as Coleman. They did well over the years, and they had Lukaku on loan and stuff like that. And I think it was right place, right time for him. But the Man United job, terrible. Sunderland, terrible. Went to Spain, I think Real Sociedad, I think it was, terrible. Come back to West Ham, he's doing terribly. I think it's not looking very good. I totally get sometimes that as a manager you have to be at right place, right time, and you come in as a manager inheriting a squad, and it's perhaps not the greatest squad, but you, again, as I said, good managers work with what they've got. And I think not to constantly go on about him, but if Roy Hodgson came into this West Ham side, or Sam Allardyce, or Dean Smith, I think you'd be looking at something different right now, quite honestly. Another team in trouble. In trouble of getting into Europe, that is Crystal Palace. No, I'm joking. Bournemouth are in trouble. Eddie Howe said that this was the best squad he's had to work with all season. Now that he's got players back from injury, I'd be worried then, because Bournemouth didn't do anything in this game. As good as Palace are, and don't get me wrong, Palace are actually a very good football side. When you look at the lineup of Palace, as I said, it costs less than 70 million to make that entire team. And that includes Christian Benteke, who signed for 28 million. So there's a lot of free transfers in here. Guaita was a free transfer. Cahill was a free. Joel Ward was 500 grand, I think. Van Arnholt was about 9 million, I think. Scott Dan, I think we signed him for maybe 5. Luca was 14. I think Coyote was less than 10. MacArthur was cheap. Ayew was 2 million. Zaha was 10 million. It's a cheap first 11. But when I look at that team, and say every single one of those knows exactly what they're doing and will give 100% on the pitch without doubt. Aston Villa are 1-up at Chelsea at half time. Wow. It's big. And I look at that midfield of Luca, Cech and James MacArthur, and I'm like, that is a midfield three there who you will know you've played against. That is a solid midfield. They will give everything. They will put tackles in. They have enough quality to be able to pass it. Although Coyote doesn't always look the most comfortable on the ball I've ever seen, but it's not necessarily 100% what he's there to do. We have wing-backs or full-backs who bomb on. Van Aanholt, I think, is incredibly underrated left-back. Set up Jordan Ayew for the second goal, which was a brilliant goal. I literally screamed at that goal because it was so good. It was a classic Palace, which was... Palace are so good at setting traps and exploiting the weakness of the opponents. And the weakness was two indecisive defenders who didn't know what they were doing or whether they should, head towards Wilf. It's almost that they're scared of him. And that, I often say it's like Wilf Zaha this season is having the worst season on paper that he's had. But in ways, he's having one of his best seasons, because in the same way I was kind of talking about Nathan Redmond in a way, like Wilf sacrifices a lot for the whole team. He gets double teamed the whole match. He gets fouled all the time. He's number one for take-ons in the Premier League. He takes players on all the time. He carries that ball up the pitch. He's so important to the team, and because the team is petrified of making a tackle on him, it opens up so much space. Van Aanholt just could run past that defender, and he didn't know what to do. Do you leave Wilf Zaha one-on-one? That's not what you want to do. So they want to keep it 2-on-1, but then you've just let the left back go in, and then Van Aanholt cutting the ball across, and Jordan Ayew, who has been if I had to say like signing of the season this season, like I'd struggle in the Premier League as a whole. I'd struggle to choose between Gary Cahill or Jordan Ayew, because like both of them have been absolutely phenomenal, I think, this season. I struggle to see two players who have come in with lower expectations from people than those two and exceeded them in so many more ways. Big names often get like the headlines of things. I'm actually struggling to think like who has been one of the best signings this season for any side. I'm trying to think actually. I'd argue Bruno Fernandes has looked really good for Man United, but to be fair, he's only had a handful of games. But I do think he will be a great signing for them. I don't think Arsenal have had any. I don't think Pepe, you could argue, is a good signing for them. Wolves signed anyone? I don't think so. Who has lit up? I guess you could argue Tielemans has looked pretty good, but he was on loan with them last season. Then I guess so was I. I don't know who else I would argue has been signing of the season. I don't think Rodrigo for Man City has pulled up, has been particularly spectacular, and otherwise they haven't really signed anyone, have they? Who they didn't have. Spurs. No, I don't think you could count Bergwijn as like signing of the season. I was trying to think of like, can we have a look at like the Premier League transfers? 2019 summer transfers. I'm trying to have a look here because I generally think that. So in for Arsenal, none of them. Nope. Aston Villa, nope. Bournemouth, nope. Brighton. Neil Maupay, I think, has done well for them, but I don't think he's done better than Ayew or Cahill. Burnley, no, I don't think any of them you would say has been a good signing. Chelsea, I don't think Kovacic has been. I think he's been a decent signing, but I don't think he's had the impact that maybe people would expect. Everton, I think Andre Gomez was a really good signing for them, but he unfortunately obviously got injured for a while. Has been out there. I think people expected more from Delph, and I think Iwobi, Keane, Moiskin has not. They haven't performed to what people thought. Tielemans, I would argue, has been pretty good for Leicester. Liverpool, no. Man City, Angelina Cancelo, no, I don't think so. Man United, would you argue? No, Harry Maguire's not played better than Gary Cahill this season. Aaron Wan-Bissaka's been a good signing for them. I don't think he's been. I don't think he's had as much of an effect as like a Jordan Ayew or a Gary Cahill though. But he has been a good signing. Newcastle, not Joe Linton. Alan Saint-Maximin. There you go. That's the person who I probably would argue so far has been signing of the season. Don't think anybody at Norwich has. Sheffield United, probably not. Dean Henderson on loan is a good signing, but I'm not going to count loans. Southampton, Danny Ings, yeah, you could argue Danny Ings as well. Tottenham, no, I think they've not been happy with their signings. Watford, no, I don't think so. Ismail Sarr's played okay, but here and there, West Ham, Haller's not been as bad as a lot of people have made out, but he's not blown the doors off, so no. Wolves, okay, Raul Jimenez was technically signed, which is a good signing, but he was on loan for like at least a season, if not more. Dendonka's been okay, but I don't think, again, I would class that as a signing of the season. So, yeah, I think we can all agree that they are the signing of the season, though. I think, yeah, Alan Saint-Maximin, I would honestly say, has probably been signing of the season and has really been a catalyst for Newcastle. But I would definitely say Jordan Ayew has been pretty darn good this season and come up with really important goals as well, which is always good. Gary Cahill, though, has been superb at the back. Just absolutely marshals that defence so brilliantly. Honestly, been so impressed with him. And again, I get why he hasn't gone to a bigger club, because of the speed and stuff like that, and the way they play is different. But for us, he's perfect. He's absolutely superb. He I don't know how we'll replace him. So, we'd have to spend 50 million probably to replace him. With that sort of experience and that sort of leadership is really hard to come by. I haven't mentioned Milivojevic's free kick, which was sublime, absolutely sublime. He I think has been one of the signings of the Premier League. Like 14 million I think he cost, which is kind of peanuts in Premier League terms. Sam Allardyce signed him, actually, funnily enough. He's our captain now. He's a brilliant midfielder, absolute leader on and off the pitch, capable of sublime free kicks like you see there. Brilliant penalty taker, which might sound a little bit funny, but actually it's a very underrated skill. Very confident. When you have a player like Wilf Zaharin who gets you a lot of penalties, like, you need somebody who's going to be able to put them away, and Luca does that brilliantly. He's been absolutely superb. I will say Benteke's played very well in the game, I thought, in that he held the ball up really well. It's still obviously massive issues with his confidence around finishing, but we're getting there. I'm really happy with Palace. Do I think we're going to be able to get into Europe? Honestly, I think this top six is how it's probably going to finish. And then we might fight it out a little bit with Sheffield United. Spurs could go either way. They could either go on a bit of a winning run and Mourinho kind of grinds out those results, or they're just going to get a bit worse. I'll know a bit more after this West Ham game. But I think Palace could finish as high as 7th, and I don't think that will get them Europe. So it's a shame, but we'll see. I dearly, dearly hope we can get into Europe, because we've never been in Europe before. Bournemouth, though, look bad. David Brooks, I thought, looked really bright, and he hadn't played football for like 18 months, so fair play to him. They need to do. They've got a tough run. They really need something. I feel like, well, I mean, at the minute, Villa are kind of going up, and that this table hasn't taken that into account. If they can hold on to a win, they go on 29 points, and suddenly West Ham and Bournemouth are in there. And honestly, if West Ham and Bournemouth went down with Norwich, it would be a shock, wouldn't it, really? But also, they would deserve it, because I think they've both been terrible this season, personally. And the game just on earlier on today was Newcastle beating Sheffield United 3-0, and it's Saint-Maximin, as I say, running the show. Absolutely superb. I cannot see him staying at Newcastle next season. I can only see him going to a big club, like a top 6 club. He is superb. I often talk about Wolf Zaha being the best player outside of the top 6, but I think actually probably Saint-Maximin is now. Probably Harry Kane is now, but you know what I mean. I think he is absolutely brilliant. I'd love Palace to buy him. I don't think that will happen. Listen, if a top club, either a Champions League club, do not sign him, then they are mental, because he is absolutely superb. He's second only to Wolf Zaha in take-ons in the league, and he's playing at a struggling club. The thing you can say about Palace is we're not struggling. He's been brilliant. Joel Linton got a goal as well, finally. Kind of a shame that it wasn't in front of the fans, though. But Sheffield United, they were down to 10 men, and Newcastle just kind of dominated them from there, which isn't a hard thing to do sometimes. I didn't think Sheffield United were all that impressive when they had 11 men, though, to be honest with you. But I guess that's just the way it goes, really. But Newcastle, I think, are a real, 12th, and I think a lot of people had them tipped for getting relegated. Steve Bruce has done an amazing job there. When you think of everything that's going on behind the scenes there, it's not like everyone in the club is pulling in the same direction. They have a lot of kind of championship players. And here they are, 12th place, 38 points on the brink of safety, that 40-point barrier, which they'll be safe 100%. There's no way that Watford, West Ham, Bournemouth are all going to get 10 points this season, or 11 points even, if Newcastle don't get a single point for the rest of the season. They've done it, and that could be massive for them if they get taken over now. I would feel sorry if Bruce got sacked because of that, but I inevitably see that happening. If Newcastle do get in these Saudi owners, which is kind of being touted around, they become one of the richest clubs in the world. I can't see Steve Bruce being the face of that personally. Which would be a massive shame, because he has done a fantastic job, and it's actually a much better manager than a lot of people give him credit for. I think he's had some shockers, but I think he's also consistently done quite well at the clubs where he's been at. But he has had he's one of those managers who's been around a lot, and he's had some successes, he's had some failures, but I think he generally is a pretty good manager, personally. And they did really well. Newcastle, they thoroughly deserved that win. And then Aston Villa, Courtney House, what happened? Right-footed shot from close range to the bottom right corner, following a set piece. So a set piece. Chelsea have been kind of weak to defensively in that respect. They've had 76% possession. Who are Chelsea playing incidentally? They're Loftus-Cheek, Giroud, Willian. That's interesting. So Pulisic is on the bench, Pedro's on the bench, Abraham's on the bench, James is in Spain, Rudiger, Alonso, Christensen, Azpilicueta, Kante, Kovacic, Mount. You'd think that would be enough to beat Aston Villa, but there you go. Anyway, I'll probably do another one on, I don't know, maybe Tuesday, because we can talk about the Everton-Liverpool, which I think will be quite an interesting game. Man City, Burnley. Maybe actually I'll leave it for Thursday. Or no, actually I'll probably do one go up Wednesday before which won't include these games, because there's a lot of games there as well to talk about. So we can talk about those kind of 4 games in a probably shorter video, and then probably on Friday I'll put up a video talking about all those games. We've got another one of BBC Sport there, Norwich Everton. But yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying the Premier League. I am, definitely. As you can tell by this hour and 15-minute rant, mostly about Arsenal. But yeah, so many talking points, really. It's fascinating. It is great. Do you know what? I feel like I've missed football in terms of watching matches and stuff like that. But I haven't missed it as much as talking about it and listening to podcasts about it and that kind of interesting stuff and listening about players and systems and all this kind of stuff. I didn't know I missed that as much as I did. and it's great to be back. So, till next time, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.